The story begins with a regular student walking down the street. He's just crossing the road when suddenly, a loud sound seizes his attention. It's the blaring horn of a bus, rushing at full speed, leaving the poor guy no time to react. Darkness engulfs him, and when he opens his eyes, a breathtaking world unfolds before him. Mythical creatures and floating islands brimming with magic stretch across the horizon. He cried endlessly, desperate to escape at all costs. However, beneath the statue of that world's goddess, a cleric revealed a way for him to return home. Determined, he adapted to this new realm, stepping onto the battlefield to fight against the forces of the Demon Lord. Along the way, he forged friendships that helped him develop trust in others and camaraderie, things he never truly grasped in his previous life. He kept growing, becoming stronger, capable of facing any adversary in his path. But tragedy is an inescapable part of life, and so, he also lost people he deeply cherished, individuals who, even in their final moments, never lost faith in him. Despite the anguish weighing on his heart, he managed to push through and keep moving forward. Before reaching the end of his journey, he decided to write a letter to his parents. There was likely no way to send it, yet he still asked them to pray for him. The moment arrives, and his companions ask if he's ready. He rises to his feet and pushes open the gate, leading to their final and greatest challenge. Before stepping inside, he glances at his party, the people who have walked this entire path with him. The massive door finally creaks open with an eerie sound, and in the center of the chamber stands the one and only Demon Lord, prepared to face the hero of that world, Minsu Kim, our protagonist. The next day finally dawns. Bells echo throughout the city as the people cheer in joy, chanting the name of the warrior who vanquished the Demon Lord. At the heart of a grand banquet, Minsu and his party celebrate their triumph. Yet, it seems his mind is elsewhere. The cleric gently asks if Minsu is truly leaving the next day. He confirms, feeling relieved that he can finally return home after all this time. Admitting that he once thought this day would never come, he lets out a soft laugh. The cleric chuckles, reminiscing about how much of a crybaby he was upon arriving. She pulls him into a hug, commending him for his incredible achievements. Overwhelmed, his emotions burst forth, and he begins to sob, confessing how much he misses his parents and friends. One of his companions bursts into laughter, admitting he always suspected there was something between Minsu and the cleric. Their faces flush red as the rest of the party continues laughing. Another member asks if he has ever considered staying in this world. The cleric swiftly interrupts, reminding everyone that Minsu's goal has always been to return home, and they shouldn't pressure him. The rest feel guilty, but confess that it pains them to see him leave. Finally, the cleric asks everyone to pray for Minsu, certain that after everything he has done for this world, good fortune and blessings await him in his own. 3 weeks have passed since Minsu returned to Earth. He gazes up at the sky, his eyes devoid of the happiness he once felt at coming home. The cleric was utterly mistaken. He saved the world, but he couldn't save himself. Upon returning, he was met with a stranger, a new resident he had never seen before. Minsu soon discovered the grim truth. 8 months after he vanished, his mother was struck by a car while distributing his missing person posters. 2 weeks later, his father, consumed by despair over failing to protect his family, took his own life. Even then, his father insisted that his missing poster be included in the news coverage of his death. Both of his parents were gone. His heart broken, and the reasons to return home were starting to fade. The police classified Minsu as a runaway, leading to his expulsion from school. His teachers practically threw him out, blaming him for what had happened to his family. His friends abandoned him, treating him as someone to be avoided at all costs. Even his remaining relatives refused to see him, holding him responsible for his parents' deaths. If only he had contacted them even once, perhaps they would still be alive. Yet no one knew he had no way to reach them. His family was not wealthy, leaving him with nothing after their passing. With barely $2 in his pocket, he spent his nights on an empty bench in the park. He had no family, no friends, no education, and no money. He no longer belonged to this world. He had saved countless lives, risked everything to return, and yet he now wondered why he had been abandoned. Suddenly, in the middle of the street, a much larger man bumped into him. Irritated, the tall guy demanded to know why Minsu was just standing there. His girlfriend laughed, calling Minsu a weakling. The guy smirked, deciding to spare Minsu's life, just because his girlfriend found him amusing. Minsu didn't react. Instead, he stared at them, his expression unreadable, and asked, "Why aren't you sad?" Tears welled up in his eyes as he repeated his question. "Are you not sad because you didn't save the world?" The man scowled, not understanding what Minsu was rambling about, his irritation growing. But Minsu continued, his voice filled with conviction. Now he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to make everyone as miserable as he was. The tall guy had heard enough. He grabbed Minsu's head, ready to teach him a lesson. But before he could act, Minsu calmly extended his hand. summoning his sword. The girl burst into laughter again, mocking him for thinking he was some kind of fantasy hero. Yet, in the next instant, a colossal sword plummeted from the sky, reducing the tall guy to nothing but fragments. The girl's laughter turned into a blood-curdling scream as she realized what had just happened. Minsu reveled in the sound of her terror, his voice laced with twisted delight. "It's not fair if I'm the only one suffering." Armor materialized, wrapping around his body as he declared himself a warrior. And as a warrior, he believed he should be the least unhappy person. Gripping his legendary sword, his armor fully formed. With a single, devastating slash, an immense wave of energy tore through the surroundings, obliterating buildings and triggering a massive explosion in the city. Standing amidst the smoldering crater he had just created, Minsu pondered one final thought. Why didn't this story end with a hero who lived happily after saving the world? 3 weeks have passed since the warriors' rampage, and the outskirts of the city are packed with cars trying to find safety. At least once in their lives, the idea of an apocalypse has crossed their minds, but I'm sure they never imagined it would be like this. Inside one of the vehicles, a young man named Jongsu Park watches the streets nervously. His mother tries to break the tension by mentioning that the traffic is overwhelming. Suddenly, his little sister starts sobbing, wondering where they are heading and why their father is not with them. Jongsu reassures her, saying that they will meet Dad if they keep moving south. He holds her hand, urging her to be strong. Out of nowhere, a police motorcycle speeds between the cars. When he reaches the front, he starts shouting that the warrior is approaching. There's no time to waste, so everyone must abandon their cars and continue on foot. He repeats the order for everyone to start walking and to follow the instructions from the police and military. Jongsu's mom tells him to stay close to Dabin, his younger sister, since finding each other will be difficult if they get separated. He anxiously agrees, and his sister clings to his arm. The police keep using the megaphone to warn everyone that the warrior is nearing, but before he can finish, a tank crashes down on him, ending his life instantly. People begin panicking upon witnessing the officer being crushed and start fleeing as if there were no tomorrow. After all, they are in a world being annihilated by a warrior. Unable to keep up with her brother's pace, Dabin begs him to slow down. Jongsu lifts her up in an attempt to get them to safety. Minsu appears unexpectedly, observing the crowd from a bridge. The thought of them running, believing there is still a chance to be saved, disgusts him. Even worse is the idea that they can survive after witnessing so many perish around them. Minsu descends toward them, proclaiming that everyone should die. Jongsu continues sprinting with his sister in his arms, but someone collides with him, causing his sister's bunny plush to slip under a car. Dabin desperately pleads with her brother to retrieve the stuffed animal. Jongsu tries to make her forget about it, but she reminds him that it was a present from their father, given to her when she turned 6. Jongsu gently places her on top of a car and asks which vehicle he should check. She points to a solitary car amid the waves of people. Jongsu tells her to keep an eye on their mother and grandmother so they can reunite later. He rushes toward the car, shoving people aside until he finally reaches it. He crouches to grab the plush, and at that moment, Minsu raises his sacred sword and, with a single slash, cuts through everything on the street. Jongsu finally stands up, relieved to have recovered the bunny. However, upon surveying his surroundings, he realizes that everything has been obliterated. Alarmed, he dashes back, searching for his sister and the rest of his family. Suddenly, he steps on something. Looking down, he finds his little sister's hand. Frantic, he clears the wreckage, hoping that she is still alive, but the sight paralyzes him. What he uncovers doesn't even resemble his sister anymore. Minsu slowly approaches from behind, drawing Jongsu's attention. Minsu praises his eyes. They are the eyes of someone who has lost everything, just like his, devoid of hope and dreams. Jongsu screams at him, demanding to know if he is responsible for his sister's death. Stoically, Minsu confirms. Jongsu grips a stick and lunges forward in an attempt to avenge his family. But in an instant, Minsu seizes him by the throat. Jongsu struggles to breathe, yet even in that dire moment, he declares that he will kill him. Minsu doesn't even flinch upon hearing those words and, with his blade, impales Jongsu. That day, he lost everything at the hands of the warrior and was powerless to stop it. In his final moments, he manages to whisper apologies to his little sister, his parents, and his grandmother before everything fades to black. However, he hears a mysterious voice urging him to wake up. His vision gradually returns, focusing on a small magician who calls him Warrior. Upon seeing him stir, she joyfully exclaims that the warrior is awake. Without warning, Jongsu has been reincarnated in another world as the very thing he despised most, a warrior. 1 year has already passed since the warrior's rampage. The government no longer exists, and above everything stands Minsu, who is practically untouchable at this point. As time went on, more warriors awakened to seize control of South Korea alongside Minsu. They followed him, dividing the entire country into 10 sectors, one for each warrior. As a result, the whole world fell into a state of chaos. We moved to Jeju Province, the domain of the Golem Warrior. A ruined city looms beneath a colossal stone eye. Inside one of the buildings, a large group of people is gathered, resembling a refugee camp. Everyone is asleep except for two girls. One of them whispers that she wants to die, while the other pleads with her to stop, fearing it will bring bad luck. The first girl insists that it doesn't matter. After all, what's the point of living like this? The other girl starts crying, begging her to stop and reminding her that they came all this way just to survive. Suddenly, the door bursts open. A massive stone hand with a speaker attached to it announces that it's time to work. It demands, in a booming voice, that everyone wake up and start moving unless they want to die. People scramble out of the room, revealing numerous identical hands, all repeating the same command. The crowd gathers in front of a building that resembles a school. A moment later, a man appears before them as the stone hands shift, forming a path leading to what looks like an altar. That man is Seongu-jeon, the Golem Warrior. With a snap of his fingers, the dirt begins to rise from the ground, coalescing into a massive sphere that takes the form of two towering speakers. A floating microphone drifts towards Seongu, and he begins by greeting everyone to a brand new day. According to his schedule, today the women will gather food while the men work on the construction of the Philosopher's Tower. Seeing no reaction, he asks why everyone looks so downcast, as if they don't want to work. The girl from earlier softly mutters that no one wants to do this. Seongu takes the microphone again and reminds them that they should be grateful for not being in the territories of the vampire or faith warrior, otherwise they'd already be dead. Even after his speech, the silence persists, making his temper flare. Muttering to himself, he pinches his fingers, complaining that he's been too lenient. Upon witnessing this, the crowd erupts in panic as the stone hands mimic their master's gesture. Seongu flicks his fingers. The hands follow his command, launching debris at high speed, piercing the bodies of their victims. The girl remains motionless, watching her friend's final moments as she gasps her name one last time, Somin. While the rest of the people flee in terror, Somin kneels and closes her friend's eyes. She bitterly acknowledges that her friend was right about bad luck. Now, she must continue enduring this nightmare alone. Seongu coldly orders everyone to start working unless they want him to flick his finger again. Sometime later, Somin is in the fields, collecting tangerines like the other women. She suddenly notices an elderly woman adding extra fruit to her basket. The old lady strikes up a conversation, remarking that she must be shaken after what happened earlier. She advises Somin to take a walk, assuring her that the tangerines in her basket will be enough to meet the quota. Somin hesitates, asking if she will be all right. The woman smiles, saying it's fine. After all, she's been picking tangerines her whole life. Before leaving, the elder reminds her to be cautious of the floating stone eye in the sky. Somin wanders into the forest, eventually reaching the sea. Whenever she feels powerless, gazing at the ocean makes her feel at peace. Perhaps that's why she chose to flee to Jeju Island. She falls to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She deeply regrets not being able to help Hayun as she lay dying. A rustling sound from the bushes makes her stop. A soldier emerges, pleading for food. She hands him everything she has, but after finishing, the man begs for more. He tells her he left his boat to retrieve supplies for the rest of his crew. Somin asks if they will fight the warrior again once they regain their strength. The man confidently assures her that they will, and with their spirits high, they might even reclaim the island. She glances at the sky, checking the direction of the floating eye. Realizing she has enough time to retrieve her basket and return before it shifts its gaze, she makes a decision. Somin accepts the risk, willing to sacrifice her life to deliver food to them. She dashes back, no longer wanting to endure this wretched existence. Upon reaching the shore, she drops the basket, her face frozen in horror. Seongu greets her, his stone hands mercilessly crushing the lifeless bodies of the remaining soldiers. Without warning, a stone hand lunges from behind, tightening its grip around her body. She frantically searches for an explanation. How did he know they were here if the eye wasn't looking in this direction? Seongu smirks, asking if she truly thought there was only one floating eye. He deactivates the invisibility, revealing a vast river of stone eyes filling the sky. He erupts into manic laughter, clapping his hands in delight. He boasts that he's been toying with everyone all this time, but it's far more entertaining when they know they're being watched. Somin screams, calling him a bastard. Menacingly, he declares that everything is her fault for being weak. If she wanted to change something, she should have become a warrior. As he speaks, Seongu increases the pressure on the hand constricting her. Somin knows there is no escape. With the last of her strength, she cries out, desperately begging for someone strong enough to fight in her place. Out of nowhere, the sky splits open, and a sphere of light crashes onto the ground, raising a thick cloud of dust. As the brilliance fades, a lone figure stands, gripping a sacred spear. Neither Sungu nor Somin recognizes the man before them. It is revealed that the warrior Jongsu Park, our true protagonist, has finally returned. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.